Snow, ice, flooding, severe weather, and even the return of the polar vortex. What? We've got full send on winter as February marches on. I've got all the details as a new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And we are going to rejoice and give praise to the Lord for the weather that we have today and the weather that is upcoming that we're going to talk about. And we have got a lot of weather to talk about today. A lot of events happening around the country or on the docket. And we are going to cover those here in a few minutes. Now, before we do, I want to remind you to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn notifications on so that you can get notified as new videos come out. We try to put these out once a day or once every other day. And so if there's a lot going on, we'll have more videos, of course. Leave a comment in the comment section. We're going to pray for each other. So any prayer requests that you have, anything that we can lift you up or walk beside of you along if you're going through a difficult time or facing a stressful situation, note that. We'll pray for each other and build a community around that. Also, leave a comment about the weather if you have something that you want to know more about, questions or comments about the show or things that you might want to see down the line. Please leave those in the comment section and we will address those as we go along. So on the docket today, we've got severe weather. We've got a snowstorm that has affected the mid-Atlantic. That is wrapping up and moving out. We've got snow that's affecting the Heartland and over into the Great Lakes, so we're going to talk about that. Cold weather is on tap for much of the country, including the northern tier along into the Great Lakes and Northeast. We're going to cover that. Flooding rains across the south, and we've even got a severe weather threat with an enhanced probability of severe weather across portions of southern Alabama and Mississippi. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. There's a tornado threat as well. We'll get into that and talk, kind of wrap up with the long range details of the forecast and what we can potentially expect as we wrap up February and head into March. Now, before we do any of that, we're going to start with today's trivia question. And today's question is, what atmospheric layer contains the jet stream, which influences weather patterns and aviation? Is it A, the troposphere, B, the stratosphere, C, the mesosphere, or D, the thermosphere? Now, I'll give you to the end of the show to answer that question. Type it in the comment section or just hold it in your mind, but we'll see if you're right when we get to the end of the show. Now we're going to start the weather segment today with the jet stream pattern. This is the European model, and what you're looking at here is winds in the upper atmosphere. Energy in the upper atmosphere is responsible for creating storm systems in the lower part of the atmosphere, and those pieces of energy are translated along in the jet stream. And as you can see as we roll this forward here, let me jump on the slider and we'll move this forward. You can see the flow is generally west to east, sometimes north to south, depending on how the upper air pattern is shaping up. But you can see these little buckles in the jet stream. These are indicative of storm systems. You've got these enhanced areas of wind. This is wind speeds. The colors represent wind speeds. These enhanced areas where it turns into kind of red and brown, these are called jet streaks, just little segments of the jet stream where the winds are faster than the winds around it. And in certain areas of this feature, you'll have lift, and that lift creates precipitation clouds and things like that. So we just saw one of those areas move off the mid-Atlantic. That was responsible for the winter storm that happened there. That's sort of wrapping up now. Moving this along, you can just see the pattern remains active as we go out in time. We'll stop it here at 144 hours, 6 days out. But a lot of disturbances moving along through the jet stream. We'll expect that to continue over the next 2 weeks. So we're going to have many bouts of rain, possibly severe weather, winter storms, depending on where you are in the country. So jet stream remains very active as we move out in time. Now let's take a look at our national hazards map. So you can see all of these watches and warnings all over the United States. About 100 million people are under advisories here, maybe even more than that by now if you count the flood watches and all of the stuff going on across the southeast. But you've got winter storm warnings here in the Heartland where snow is falling, and you've still got these winter storm warnings over here in the mid-Atlantic where we see the winter storm that affected this area is kind of wrapping up and pulling out. And then you've got cold weather warnings up here, so extreme cold warnings. Again, we talked about this yesterday, but bitterly cold temperatures moving in as the polar vortex makes its return. Heading over to the mid-Atlantic, we see the radar, and we can put this into motion. I'll go ahead and start that, but you can see the rain pulling out. As it does so, there's a little bit of lingering light precipitation, some mixed precipitation where the temperatures remain slightly below freezing, but everybody is warming up, and we kind of expected this to happen. Everybody's kind of warming up here in portions of Virginia down into North Carolina. Now, what we're going to see over the course of the next 12 hours or so, some of these areas up here, and I'll see if we can draw here. I'll show you. So this area in here in the western North Carolina up into the mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains here in West Virginia into Virginia. This area here still stands to see some more icing. Looking at anywhere from a quarter of an inch to a half an inch of ice total in this area here. And so we're seeing reports of that ice accrual continuing to build up. Outside of that area, the snow has fallen. It's going to melt as rain comes in. Could have some flooding concerns as all of that snow melts and heavier rain works into the area as round 2 moves in over the course of the next 24 hours. So backing out here and taking a look at the Heartland, where we've got an actual winter storm unfolding here. We've got snowfall rates, anywhere from 1/10 of an inch up to 3/10 of an inch, maybe a little bit higher than that in some spots. Nothing too heavy in here. It looked like yesterday we're going to see maybe 8 inches in spots. That's probably a little bit overzealous, but this entire area in here is going to pick up anywhere between 2 to 6 inches. This thing's moving through pretty rapidly. There's not a lot of snow banding and heavy activity, so we're not going to see the snow pile up too greatly here. And so if we look at our NAM prediction of snowfall totals, we'll just slide this forward, and you can see a nice little winter storm. Nothing that's not going to make the history books or anything like that, but a nice swath of snow coming in, and you're looking at somewhere in the order of 4 to 5, 6 inches of kind of up through Des Moines into Milwaukee and on into the Great Lakes. So that will get on out of here in the next 24 hours. The big story coming in for the northern half of the country, at least, is the cold temperatures. Looking here, looking at pivotal weather. Let's change the orientation of it so we can see it a little bit better. So up here in Canada, we're looking at temperatures in the minus teens. That's going to get a little bit colder as we work through time, and that's going to penetrate into the northern half of the country. So you can already see that. So this sort of boundary here, this dark purple boundary, let's do this. Let's go to our pen again, if I can grab it. This dark purple boundary represents the 0 Fahrenheit line. So this is where we're talking about above or below 0, and then this dark blue to sort of this green transition is the freezing line. So as we go over time, you'll see that kind of play out here. And so let's put this map into motion and just kind of watch that as we go forward. So it's going to get cold. So we're going to slide this in, minus 20s dipping into the northern tier, sliding it forward. Look at Canada up here, almost minus 30. Just moving that on out in time. We see that temperature profile sort of advance south and east as we work through time, and just cold after cold after cold. So the polar vortex is back, and back in a big way, unrelenting. Look at this; it dives south, and this is the European ensemble suite, by the way. So this is a mean. Some of the operational models look a little bit colder than this, but this is a mean, so it sort of smooths it out as we go through time here. And as you can see, just brutally cold diving in. So winter has no sign of abating until we get out here toward the end of the pattern, or the end of the time range here for this model. And even then, I think it's probably a little bit too hasty. We're probably going to see winter extend into mid-March, given some of the background influencing factors on the pattern, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. Now, let's turn our attention over here to severe weather. So we've got an enhanced risk now of severe weather down here across portions of southern Alabama, southern Mississippi. Excuse me. Still getting over that flu, man. This thing has lingered and lingered and lingered. It is a mess. I hope you haven't had it because it's one of those things that's just kind of unrelenting with me. But we've got an enhanced area here. Now, yesterday it looked like this might not be such a big deal, and it still may not be, but better safe than sorry. So you need to pay attention if you're in these areas and enhanced tornado risk. And so what's driving that? So if we take a look here, this is a sounding for southern Mississippi. Now, you don't need to worry about all the stuff on this page, but I want to show you a couple of things. This is height, so at the ground, it goes up, 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 up. And you can see these wind barbs. These winds barbs show you direction and they show you speed. And so look here. So we've got winds at the surface turning with height. Look how they turn and they rotate. Over here, you see a hodograph. This is just a representation of that in a different way. But when you start to see these long sickle-shaped patterns here, you've got a lot of area that's essentially spin as you go up into the atmosphere, a lot of turning of the winds with height that creates spin. And so thunderstorms come along, they interact with that spin, and they can spin up tornadoes. This is a pretty significant or sizable hodograph, and we can see that reflected in the storm relative helicity values down here. You don't need to be an expert on this stuff, but just know anything, when you start getting 400 and 500 values, that's pretty significant shear, and so turning with height. And yesterday it did not look like we were going to have very much CAPE, but southerly winds have pulled the warm front north, and now you've got rich moisture coming in out of the Gulf. And you can see mixed layer CAPE approaching 1,200 joules per kilogram. So that is a fairly unstable environment to interact with the wind shear. Now, as these thunderstorms develop, they're going to be working with strong winds in the lower portion of the atmosphere. So about 5,000 feet off the ground, we've got winds coming in, at 50, 60 knots. And as you can see, as we put this into motion, let's run this out to 12 hours. So this evening is when the severe threat's going to take off. And you can see here in Mississippi and Alabama, this 850 millibar jet streak that's coming in is 50 knots up to 60 knots in here. So very, very strong winds in the low levels. The thunderstorms are going to grow. They're going to make use of that. They're going to translate that down to the ground if the storms develop strong enough. The one saving grace may be that there's a messy storm mode. So when you get supercells, they can really take advantage of the environment. They move around and on off, and you get rotation. You get potentially strong tornadoes if you have enough rotation in the atmosphere. So we're going to watch for that. If too much convection develops out ahead and they start to interact with each other, they could mess up the environment a little bit and lessen the tornado threat. But still, it's one of those things we'll need to keep a watch on. The whole entire area is under the gun here in the southern part of the South, and the storm mode should change over into a linear mode as we go through time. You see how that jet kind of strengthens. And if we look at the NAM prediction of the storm mode, we'll roll this out to 12 hours in the evening, and you can see some cells starting to form out ahead of the main line, and here's some supercells. So we'll watch for those. Roll this on through the evening hours. You can see that line kind of develop and move off. And so the wind threat should pick up as the tornado threat sort of abates, and you can see that line move through into tomorrow and then move on off. And so flash flooding, flood watches are up here for flash flooding. A lot of heavy rain is going to be associated with this. Even if you don't get severe weather at your location, still be on the lookout for heavy rain. So now taking a look at the flood threat, the WPC issued their map again, and you can see it's a little bit less than yesterday. So we're looking at quite a bit less precipitation. They had a large area of 5 to 7 inches. That's reduced a little bit. It looks like maybe the orientation of the rain axis and the speed of which it moves through over these next several systems is going to be such that it might limit the precipitation to only 4 to 5, 6 inches now, but still a very wide swath of rain expected in through this area. So flooding potential is up here. If we look at our European ensemble, mean we can kind of roll this out through the end of the run. But as you can see, where we saw a lot of areas of 5, 6, 7 inches of rain, we're seeing that kind of reducing as we go forward in time, which is good news. We don't need 7 or 8 inches of rain, but still there's going to be flooding concerns in this entire area. So pay attention here. The GFS largely agrees with that too. Now, if we roll that forward, it's kind of the same footprint, same sort of amount. So pretty good agreement on the overall pattern. A lot of activity in the pattern, so we're going to see storm after storm kind of swing through here. Some of this is going to be in the form of convection or thunderstorms, and some of it's going to be in the form of stratiform rain as systems sort of track in this general area on off to the east and northeast. So next up, the long-range patterns. We talked about this a little bit before. The cold air is in Canada. It's poised to come in. Why is that happening? Well, you've got blocking taking shape up over the pole. You've got a pattern right now that's got sort of a trough in the west, a little bit of ridging in the east. This is a 500 millibar anomaly map. Remember, we always look at what's going on upstairs so we can understand what the sensible weather on the ground is going to be. And at 500 millibars, a good way to look at what's going on, and that's at, about 18,000 feet, maybe 20,000 feet up in the atmosphere, is to look at this anomaly map and see where it's the heights are higher, which you would expect warmer than normal conditions on the ground, and where they're lower than normal, the heights are lower than normal, you'd expect colder than normal conditions on the ground and potentially stormy too. And so right now we've got a trough in the west. Activities moving up in kind of this direction. Let's get our pen here. Let's draw. Well, we got to select the pen, and now we can draw. So the storm track's kind of like this, right? So why has it not been snowy in the southeast? Well, you've got a storm track that kind of goes like this. You need to be on the northern side of the storm track if you want snow and ice, and we have been on the southern side of this, so it's been warm. It's been very, very rainy, and we've not had any snow, and that makes us very sad. So let's see what the pattern holds as we go forward in time. So let's roll this forward. This is the European ensemble mean. Look at that blocking taking shape. This is very anomalous blocking, folks. And what this does is suppress the height pattern south. That suppresses the jet stream to the south, and that gives you a better chance for cold and snow in the United States, depending on where you are. So we roll this forward. That block still remains in place. We've got a southeast ridge that's really robust here, but look what happens to it over time. That blocking just really takes hold of the pattern and forces a trough to migrate over here into the east. This ridge pops up on the west coast, and you get a flow around that, delivering cold air straight out of the Arctic. And we saw that when we looked at the temperature profile before. So that block sort of weakens over time, and that's sort of to be expected on an ensemble mean. It can, start to get spread in the members, and it sort of smooths that stuff out. And as we continue to go on down to 2 weeks out, look at that trough reemerge back into the east. And so what does our pattern look like here? We've got big active jet out in the Pacific, but it sort of comes up like this. The blocking kind of merges into in with this ridge on the west coast. You get a flow that sort of looks like this, comes down, delivers cold in the east and warm out west. All this Arctic air is just funneling right into the eastern half of the country. And so that's what the European ensemble mean says. That doesn't mean it's right. That's just what the model is showing. So how do we know if it's right or not? Well, let's take a look at the GFS. Not that the GFS is always going to tell us a correct solution out in time, but does it agree with the European? And it looks like it does. Look, ridge out west, trough in the east. So what does that all mean? So there's the European ensemble, there's the GFS ensemble. Good agreement there. The MGAO is in a phase that would support this as well. So there are several factors that support a colder east and a colder south. And so all that means for us is that we need to be on alert as we get into the end of February, into the first half of March, for a fairly sizable, potentially sizable snow event somewhere here in the eastern half of the country. And so I'm watching this whole entire area here from Georgia, South Carolina, on up into Maine, in the Great Lakes region for a fairly anomalous snowstorm or winter storm. It could be an ice storm, it could be a snowstorm, but I think there's a lot of energy in the pattern. You've got an active subtropical jet, and you've got plenty of cold being fed into the pattern. So, looking at all of that, if you look at the snow mean here, it's not too impressive, but it is kind of far south. I mean, you're seeing snow reflected in the mean over, this is GFS ensemble, over 2 weeks. And so you've got some members seeing snowfall extending pretty far to the south, of course, in the Northeast and the Great Lakes, banger of a pattern. Same with European ensemble. It's actually got, I believe this is the 2-inch line here where you see this blue. And so lots and lots of opportunity, I think, over the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks for somebody here in the Southeast particularly, and maybe even back into Texas and to the upper portions of the South to score a winter storm. And we'll end with the jet stream. You can see that here. We started with this. We're going to end with this too. This is out in time. The European this is actually the European operational run, but you can see as we put this into motion, 200 hours all the way to the end of the run, just active pattern. Lots of energy in the pattern. The subtropical jet gets involved, as I said before. I think we're going to see the disturbances move along in this. This is what we'll look for in the south. If we start to see disturbances move along in the southern stream, kind of independent of this energy up here in the northern stream, we could see the northern stream deliver the cold air, the southern stream deliver the moisture, the systems that will provide moisture out of the Gulf and off the Atlantic, and heighten the chance for winter weather in the south. This actually looks a little bit more like an El Nino pattern, to be honest. But we'll roll that out, and you can see just an active pattern. This is showing a pretty significant dip in the jet stream. Could be a storm here. So that wraps us up for today. Now, before we head out, we're going to hit our, came in with a new segment yesterday. We're going to rebrand that. It's going to be called the Hometown Hotspot. And so today's Hometown Hotspot is Minot, North Dakota. You see this city depicted a lot on weather casts because it's very cold, and people like to say, Minot, North Dakota, it's -20. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Minot today, and I'm going to bring this up. And so Minot was founded in 1886 during the construction of the Great Northern Railway. It's the 4th most populous city in the state of North Dakota, and nearly 48,000 people call it home. It's also home to the Minot Air Force Base and the Dakota Territory Air Museum. You can also view large cats and bears and birds at the Roosevelt Park Zoo. And don't forget to stop by the Starving Rooster, where you can enjoy some excellent pizza and a Cuban panini, if you like. So that is Minot, North Dakota. It's very cold in Minot today, and the weather forecast is nothing but cold after cold after cold. Maybe you get above 0 for a couple of days, then back below. So enjoy any sunshine that you get. Hopefully spring will come, but over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it looks like predominantly it's going to be pretty cold. And that brings us to the answer to today's trivia question. What is the layer of the atmosphere that contains the jet stream, which influences weather patterns and aviation? And the answer is the troposphere. The troposphere is a lower layer of the atmosphere. It's the lowest layer of the atmosphere, rather, that contains most of the oxygen and water vapor within the atmosphere. We all live here, of course, and all of our weather patterns exist here. And did you know the troposphere is higher over the equator than it is over the pole? So it extends much higher into the atmosphere, about 12 miles over the equator, as opposed to just 4 miles above the pole. And now you know. So that brings us to our last segment today. We're going to call it Cold Rain's Corner. It's a new segment where I talk about whatever I want to talk about that's not weather related. We won't do this every day, but today, if there's in a situation like today where there's something on my mind, I want to communicate that with you as well. And so today, what I have on my mind is Proverbs 10:19. Reading through the book of Proverbs is very, very fruitful. There are a lot of excellent verses in there that communicate good information that we can apply on a daily basis. It's called the Book of Wisdom for a reason. And 10:19 says, when words are many, transgressions are not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. You've all heard the the old saying, it's better to be silent and have people think you're a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. So that sort of steps right in line with what Proverbs is saying here. We want to be careful about what we say and how we say it. It's good to have information. It's good to be in the know, to have the skinny, but it's not always good to relay what you know. Sometimes it's better to hold that information back and not spread around information that could harm other people. There's no reason to do that. There's a lot of stress and anxiety in the world today, and we should use our words to lift people up, encourage people, and um, help somebody feel better and face the day in a better way. And so oftentimes our words are too quick, they're too hasty. We speak glibly about things for which we've given no great thought. I'm guilty of this myself. So this is a good word for me to think before we speak. You never know what kind of day someone is having or what's going on in their life. And a simple, kind word can do so much to help somebody approach the day or approach their life or their situation in a better way. So keep that in mind. And with that, we'll call it a show for today. This is Cold Rain reminding you that if you did not like the weather that you saw today, there's always another model out there that probably shows something better. It's your job to go and find it. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.